Yeah, if you're learning a language that basically it's spoken only in one country, and on top of that in a small country, or you're trying to learn more local language or a slang depending, then that's going to be very difficult, because most of the time a lot of content they're online or in books, and it can be very difficult for certain languages, and certain most of the app and everything there do not support those minor or less popular languages. So how do you do, like, how do you actually learn those languages? In this channel we're talking language learning, productivity tips, but also creativity tips. And I've been learning different language which are fairly popular, but I've also tried to learn Bulgarian and Macedonian when I was living in those countries, and I came across that realization it's not the same game wanting to learn a language that has less resources compared to Spanish or compared to Mandarin Chinese. So what is the best way to go about with learning language which you have either minimum access to the resources, or the resources are so expensive that you're not able to afford them, or simply there is a lack of a native speaker that you can reach? So yeah, I will start with this, and I hope that the tips that I'm gonna give you, it's gonna really help you. The first thing that I think is very, very important is to understand what is your situation. When you need to understand what is your situation, you need to understand, am I in direct contact with the language? As I mentioned, I lived in Macedonia and in Bulgaria, and when I wanted to learn the language, I was in direct contact with the language because I was living there. I had also some motivation to learn the language because I was living there, but because also at the time I had a relationship where the language would have been useful in the long run. So for me, I was both in contact with the language in terms of living in a country, but also I had a end goal which would make me kind of keep my motivation. So you really need to understand the reason why you're learning it, but because if it's by pure pleasure of discovering, that's also really good motivation, because it's really coming like your curiosity. But you need to really understand where is the purpose of it, and also your environment. If you have, for example, also met people who wanted to learn a certain type of Creole. I speak Redonese Creole, but there you have a lot of different type of Creoles, and sometimes some people want to learn Creole or a language because it's from their family background. So then the level of purpose is really high, but sometimes you'll be surprised, but sometimes it's very difficult for them to have an environment where they will be able to learn like in real context this language, because often those people, their parent didn't talk to them in the language, and the parent don't want to talk to them in the language, or their parent can't talk in the language. So you need to identify the gaps. You need to understand, okay, what is the current environment and what is the language, the purpose that I have for that language. Once you have this, you need then to analyze, okay, I have, for example, access to native speaker who can talk to me in the native language. So I have a part cover of the language learning. What I have covered is basically access to conversation. I can also, is like, it's a dictionary, to be honest. It's like someone that is native can literally, it's a walking dictionary, a mobile dictionary. But obviously you don't have access to that person all the time. That person has a life and it's normal, but then it can be a really good starting point. If you don't have any native, or you don't have access to native, is there online a document such as a website or a book that you can buy, or even a book that is free sometime, or even like shows that teach you the language? You'll be surprised to find that some language you would find very, very old resources for learning, resources for free on YouTube. So really the first phase when you're learning is really to identify what is the current market with the language that you're learning. Then once you have this in place, then you can start filling the gap. How do you fill the gap? So one thing that I've done, and I think that is very useful, it doesn't have it in all of the language, but it's, you can make it yourself. There is this list, I think it's more than 500 words, right? It's top 500 words, and it's kind of a foundation. It's a vocabulary foundation. You will be very surprised to know that if you are building that list based on the 500 words that the author has indicated, because this list is public and you can make your own list. It doesn't have to be one that you buy, because the author also sells. I've purchased this in Dutch, for example, but you can also make it your own. So you have the list. It's really a foundation vocab, and you can yourself search like for the translation. You can use Google Translate or other things. I would recommend other things if possible to make sure it's accurate, but it's okay to make mistakes as well. Obviously, if you can get your hands on a dictionary, that would help a lot. But then you come into the issue. It's not really an issue, but if you're speaking a language that is not so well spoken and then use a different alphabet, that's, gets a little bit trickier. I think most of the language, more or less, you can get by with it, at least the one on top of my head, because even like in India, even, they would use a similar syllable alphabet. All of the Cyrillic language use kind of the basic foundation of Cyrillic, which you will be able to find. So obviously you need to be able to read the language, but on top of that, then you need to have to build that foundation vocab. That foundation vocab can be directly, either you get it from a place or you build it yourself using that 500 word list. It's very, for me, if you know those words, you know how to use the present tense, one present tense, one past tense, that's enough. I think that's more or less enough. You can use the future by using the present tense. I think at the beginning that's fine. In some language, actually, it is not even a future tense, which is great. But that's when you're learning a language that have minimum resources. You really need to get the vocab, because that's how you're gonna start understanding things. You're gonna be able to start to speak. And then the second part, once you have built that foundation, now it's about time to find actual resources online. I am a true believer of immersion learning, and to do immersion learning, you need to find native content. And with the whole method of like the refill method or the immersion, I'm telling you, even if it's a language that is not so well spoken, you will still be able to find video online of that language. It might take some time, because maybe if you type the language and you type, for example, Macedonian spoken, maybe you're not gonna find, but you can start to look, okay, what are the famous channel in that country? Maybe I can start look into the channel itself. Then maybe which are the famous YouTuber from this country. So you start building up again a resource. You're really creating your learning environment. If it doesn't exist, you make it yourself. You find the people to talk to. You find the vocab that you need by doing it yourself. You don't need to have a ready-made Anki deck. You make it yourself. And on top of that, you go and dig. I say really dig for native resources. With just that alone, I think you will make really good progress. Grammar is always question when you do immersion. I'm part of the people that love grammar, so I always recommend finding ways to get your hand on a grammar. If you can't get your hand on a grammar book, is there a phrase book? Because a phrase book, if you study a little bit the structure, it's almost like Duolingo, right? They give you like a phrase, and then you kind of retain like the information. But if you see multiple phrases, then you might be able to see patterns, and you might practice and figure it out. Okay, is that how it works? Yes or no? And also, I think now with the use of AI, although it's not perfect, you can also find ways to use AI to take part of your learning journey. I might do a video on that as well. I think that would require a little bit of preparation, maybe on explaining like how I myself using it. I use it a bit every day, not only for language learning, but in general. So yeah, I hope that would also help you start, or if you feel stuck because you feel like there is not enough resource, to find a way to really build your whole own language course. I also want to do a video on how you can build your curriculum as a language learner. I think that is really great if you like to have a structured way of functioning outside of school, and also if you're not someone that can just wing it, they can just go with the flow, that needs a structured way of to see progress. So that is something that I will do as well in the future. But yeah, I would say I will let you enjoy, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.